Shall we do it again? I think we should do it again. Breeze Nation, what's good? It's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love to another edition of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Got a lot to get into on today's show because I am going to give you one free agent for every one of the Chicago Bears main coaches that they could bring over. I wasn't getting deep in the weeds on the assistants and all that. Also, we got to take a deep dive into this Senior Bowl, and so we're going to have a special guest who was in the building join us here on the show. Nick Moreano of the Bigs Media going to be joining us here for a few minutes just to talk about what he saw down at the Senior Bowl, who stands out, and who the Chicago Bears should be looking at heavily. All that and more in today's episode of the Windy City Breeze Sports Talk Daily. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Big love, big love, big love, big love to you guys out there, man. Appreciate y'all for rocking with your boy. As always, y'all know what time it is, man. I need y'all to go ahead and
Come on. Push the button. Come on. Push the button. Come on, push the button.
Yeah, come on, push the button.
You heard what she said.
Y'all heard what Sue Young said. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. Stop playing with your boy out here. Lot to get into. Appreciate y'all for pulling up on us. The Chicago Bears have an entirely new coaching staff. There's a lot of excitement around the new coaching staff, right? There's a lot that you really want to see done here. But the next thing that's going to be the next big thing is who's coming here in free agency. The next thing, that's the number one thing that the Chicago Bears are going to be looking out for, is who's going to be the next person to come here in free agency. And all of these coaches have some attachments to some really good name players. So I want to run through some that, at least when I looked at it, some of the free agencies from some teams that these guys have coached on, have been a part of, that I thought really stand out and really get me a little bit excited if they were to come here. Let's start off here. Because let's be honest, the one thing that has every single one of us sitting here every day just going, oh, please, could we maybe protect Caleb Williams here a little bit? The one thing that has us doing that every single day is this offensive line. I'm going to start with the head coach here, Ben Johnson. I know I said one, but there's a couple of names on this list that I think that you could target for Ben Johnson. Number one being Dan Skipper. He's somebody that a lot of people have talked about the possibility of bringing him over. He's a monster. He's plays tackle. He's kind of a swing guy for that Detroit team. Going to be a free agent this season. And when you look at this guy's size, 6'9", 317 pounds. He's only 30 years old. He kind of is that Matt Pryor sized guy that comes in, already knows the system. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you that you have to bring Dan Skipper over as this starter that has promised the job. I think that you need to look through and still go out and get main pieces. But as you talk about building out that depth, as you talk about adding to that tackle room, as you talk about possibly giving a guy a little bit more opportunity, I think he's somebody that you could look at. Last season, only allowed 1 sack all season on 322 offensive snaps played. Now, again, he's that backup guy. He's not the number one guy that's going to be in there all the time. But in those moments where you need somebody who's just going to be reliable, and that was something that happened a lot here with the Chicago Bears this season. You just needed somebody who was going to be reliable. You just needed somebody who was going to step up. You didn't have that. Remember, we're plugging in Larry Borum. We're plugging in, heck, at a certain point, Karan Amagaji was somebody who was getting plugged into that spot, right? Like, you're putting guys in there who don't have the talent, who don't have the ability, who don't have the understanding of the offensive line position to go out there and be an elite player for you. Those are things that you have to worry about. And while I'm not sitting here telling you need to break the bank to go out and get a guy like Dan Skipper, I think that he's somebody who you can throw out there. You don't have to worry about the job that he's going to do. You can know that he's going to get the job done for you. and that he's going to be a solid piece. For me, if I'm Ben Johnson, he's somebody that I absolutely look to bring over, already understands kind of the system that you're trying to put in place. Even though this system, again, remember, Ben Johnson said that this system for Caleb Williams is going to be different. Ben Johnson said this system for Caleb Williams is not going to be what was run for Jared Goff. We're building this for the quarterback that is coming in. Those are exciting times. Those are things that I do love to see for the Bears. And honestly, I think that it's going out and getting somebody who already knows, okay, this is kind of what Ben expects to set that standard. I think that's good. He shouldn't be the leader on your offensive line. Let's not pull a Ryan Poles 2.0, right? He shouldn't be the leader on your offensive line. He shouldn't be the only guy that you're looking at out there. You should be looking to attain other pieces. I still want to go and get Trey Smith. I still want to go and get a guy like Ryan Clark and or draft somebody like Jake Majors. I'm still big on going out and getting the leader of this line. But I think you can do a heck of a lot worse if you look at a guy like Dan Skipper. Another guy, Coyote Awosika. I knew I was going to mess his name up. Coyote Awosika was another backup guy who was thrown out there with Ben Johnson that, listen, they loved him out there in Detroit, but just not a ton of time and doesn't have the versatility. Right, doesn't have the versatility to go out there and be a number one, a starter, but at a specific position, right? At that guard position, I thought that he was somebody very much coming off of the bench that could fill in and be in one of those spots. I think, again, you're focusing on the trenches. There's not going to be a ton of names out here. I looked at a guy like Tim Patrick coming out of Detroit as well. I'm good. Yeah, I mean, if I'm taking a chance on, what is Tim Patrick, 30 years old at this point? If I'm taking a chance on 30-year-old Tim Patrick, let me take a chance on 25-year-old Tyler Scott and see if I can get the most out of him. You know what I'm saying? I think that's, to me, the best logic there. If you're going to go wide receiver there, not a ton of running backs going to be on the market for you from Detroit. So I think you look at the line play that you saw out in Detroit, and to me, that's where you take your biggest focus if you're Ben Johnson, trying to bring some of those former guys over. Now, if you agree with that, hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Let me know some guys that you would want to see the Chicago Bears bring over in this upcoming free agency. By the way, we do have a behind the Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love. Vizzo Joe said Tyler Scott doesn't have any hands. That's the problem. I mean, all we're basing this off of is the Justin Fields season. We really didn't see him drop anything last year because we didn't see him get on the field. I mean, it's not like he had this elite amount of time to go out there and work on his game. You know what I mean? Like I would, if I'm paying Tim Patrick money, I would like to see what a guy like Tyler Scott could do, man. This is the one that I think is very, very interesting for the Chicago Bears if they were to make a move and bring in somebody who worked with a former coach that you just brought in. Your defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen, has a connection that goes all the way back to his first head coaching job back in Oakland. And any ties to anything Oakland immediately point my brain to somebody who spent some time here already. 6'3", now he's 33 years old. Got to take a chance on an older player, but still proving to be dominant at every single turn. 269-pound Khalil Mack is available, is a free agent, and is somebody who, for the right amount of money, I might be interested in seeing finish out his career in Chicago. He has talked about how he's kind of getting to the point where he's ready to call it quits. He's talking with the family about the possibility of where he's going to end up retiring at and different things like that. But Khalil Mack was drafted to that team in Dennis Allen's rookie season as a head coach over in Oakland. Last season, you look at Mack's grades. I mean, still a phenomenal player. 88 run grade on PFF, 79.9 pass rush grade on PFF. He got 7 sacks last season, forced 2 fumbles, still able to make an impact on the field. Now, what I will say is this. You have to be careful not to overspend. The good thing is here, right? that Ryan Poles was not the one that brought him in, but could he be the one that gets him back? It's not like he treated Mac poorly. It's not like he traded Mac to a terrible situation, traded him to a good spot. They were willing to take on the money. They were willing to pay Khalil Mack to continue through the rest of his career. And I would be so very interested to see what a Khalil Mack, Montez Sweat offensive line would look like, what that would do for guys like Javon Dexter. We already know Dennis Allen knows how to utilize this guy. I would love to see how he would utilize the tandem of Mack and Sweat together. I think that those are two names that just, while you can kind of see Khalil Mack slowing down, if you can get him in here at a 2-year, 30 kind of contract, a little front loaded where it's kind of the end for him, I think you're getting good value on a Khalil Mack right now. I don't think there's a ton of places that he wants to be. I don't think there's a ton of places that he wants to spend his career. Now, realistically speaking, if you're talking about bringing Mack back, the big question on him would be, hey, is he more so looking to finish out his career competing for a championship? If that is the case, I think that you have to take a look at Khalil Mack as more of an option probably somewhere else. But if you're talking about pairing him back up with his old coach, I think that would be somebody that I would be very, very interested in seeing in a Chicago Bears jersey yet again. And then finally, we got to finish it out with this name, and then we'll bring on our special guest here as we keep the show moving here. Declan Doyle spent some time in Denver with Sean Payton, and a free agent that will be very interesting to see him bring over. And here's the thing, he's a tight ends coach. I don't know how much this guy talked to him. We don't know anything about it. I can't wait to ask, because we're going to have Nick Moreano join us here in a second. Nobody asked about Ditka. I need to know the answer on that. Why is nobody asking about Ditka? Is he related? We need to find this out. But Javonte Williams over in Denver, I think that if you were going to bring one of the free agents over from Denver, the Bears run game needs some help. Y'all know I'm not big on paying running backs. He's coming off of much more of a down season, but we've seen him do so much better. Went from being in a one-back system to a two-back system, and you saw his numbers kind of get cut in half. But my mind instantly goes back to those times where he was able to be that lead back in the system against, honestly, funny enough, the Dennis Allen defense this season a few months ago, where he had a 2-touchdown game. His rookie year, he was basically remember that human joystick name? I mean, he was break tackle every single time he got the football. I think that he would be a interesting get if you could get him for low money, maybe even bring him in on maybe $2 million moving forward for this season, 1-year type of deal, because you do have Ian Wheeler still on the books as well. He's somebody I'm very intrigued to see too. But you've got Roschon Johnson on the team who is dealing with some concussion issues. That's a little bit concerning, right? You also have DeAndre Swift, who just couldn't get the job done. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Hopefully the Bears are able to bring in some good free agents that are going to be able to improve this team vastly as we get into this next cycle of what's coming up for the Bears. But let's not have our guest wait any longer. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. I want to welcome in Nick Moreano to the Windy City Breeze. My guy Nick, always coming with some great content, always coming with great questions in the press conference. Nick, what's going on, my guy? How you feeling?
I'm pretty good, man. Still kind of getting back from the Senior Bowl and lack of sleep there, but I'm excited to be on with you, man.
Listen, I'm glad to have you here. Had to bring you in to talk about the Senior Bowl. I want to get to that here, but I want to get your take on this coaching staff. I just talked about some of the people that could come in with the coaching staff, but Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, Declan Doyle, they retain Richard Hightower. Me and you were both up there asking Flus and a lot of these coaching staff's questions last season, and you just left every press conference almost scratching your head. How do you feel about these guys right now? I get it, we're still in the honeymoon phase, but it seems so different.
It does seem a lot different. And let's start with a guy like Dennis Allen. I think that was a really important hire for a first-year head coach in Ben Johnson. Just getting somebody that has been a head coach before, but has had some credibility in this league for what he's done defensively with the Saints. And I think it'll just be you'll see him utilize some of these Bears playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, I think, in a better way than what was happening with Flus was here. Like a guy like Jalen Johnson, like Dennis Allen is not afraid to let his number one corner go shadow guys.
Yeah.
Like, and when you see Jalen Johnson, you want to get more out of that guy because he wants the team's best opposing matchup. So I think you'll even see somebody like that be better utilized. And we know he likes to use these bigger defensive ends. So, Montez Sweat would fit that prototypical mold that Dennis Allen would like. So maybe get somebody opposite of him to go, create some havoc. I heard you talking about Khalil Mack a little bit there, and that would be enticing, man, to have those two guys at the end and see what they could do together. But Dennis Allen, I think, was a huge get. And then like a guy like Declan Doyle, obviously very young, but everybody I talked to at the Senior Bowl that overlapped with him, they're like, it's 2 years too late for him to be an OC. Like, he would have been 26 as an OC. Like, dude's 28 right now. He's super young, but a lot of respect for Declan Doyle, how he approaches his business and being the right-hand man to Ben Johnson. Just get him in the film room, allow him to kind of grind out that tape and see what how he can be an asset to Ben Johnson. So I'm not we'll see with Declan. And obviously you're not gonna like how much of an impact is he gonna have in terms of Ben Johnson play calling. It's wait to be seen, but I did like the hire. I mean, look, I am an Iowa guy, just gonna put that out there. Declan and I, we actually overlapped when we were at Iowa. I obviously didn't know him at the time or didn't know he was gonna be, the future OC of the Bears, but we'll see how he can create a positive impact for Ben Johnson. Then Richard Hightower, I think, was a key just keep for the Bears. I think that's a guy that knows the roster, knows how to utilize those guys. Obviously, you saw what he did in the game against Green Bay and setting people up like Josh Blackwell to go, get that 92-yard touchdown. But I think it was a nice addition for Richard Hightower to be retained. He knows how to get the best out of Cairo Santos. And, obviously with Torrey Taylor, his guy there, like you want to see him continue to, obviously get better and some more consistency with Torrey. But yeah, I think overall we are in the honeymoon stage, and once games are played, we'll see how these coordinators really do.
That's what it all comes down to, right? I remember walking in early and we're like, Flus has a little bit of a different confidence in him. Look at that beard, man. This guy's got it. And halfway through the season, we're like, he could have shaved it. He could have just left the beard off. You should have. Nothing changed. The big talk, the reason I wanted to have you on was because you were down at the Senior Bowl. And listen, Bears down there, they're scouting people. I saw and I heard from a bunch of people, there was some really, really exciting things offensive line-wise. Dare I say, and I'm not the biggest running back guy, but even running back-wise down there. Let's start off with the O-line because I think that's the biggest thing that everybody's focused here with the Bears. I've said on the show, Nick, this is the only city that cares who the offensive line coach is. Like the only city that cares who the offensive line coach is. So when you look at some of the O-linemen that we saw down there, what were your thoughts on some guys that maybe stood out, that maybe climbed the ranks for you a little bit?
Yeah, even before against some of the players like Ian Cunningham, Ryan Poles, they were there on day 2 and day 3 at those practices, and a lot of their attention in the trenches, watching those offensive defensive line go at it. So there was a hyper focus there for the Bears brass to kind of just look and see what the talent was. Does it mean they're going to draft one of these guys? Who's to say? We'll have to wait until April to see if that happens. But there was a heavy emphasis on them just focusing on the offensive and defensive linemen. But in terms of guys that I think raised their stock, North Dakota State's Gray Zabel. This is a guy that throughout the reps in the one-on-one period line up at left guard, at center, at right guard. And right now, the Bears could use guys at all 3 of those positions. So I think Gray's given himself more opportunities if Ryan Poles elects to go with a guy like that. But I think he was arguably the most consistent player on all 3 days, really stacked up well against the tougher level competition coming from an FCS school. But you wouldn't know it just based off how he was blocking, how he was moving his feet, using his hands. So Gray Zabel's, I think, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. I also liked looking at, again, another small school guy, and maybe people are, thinking Braxton Jones, don't want any part of that, but they just kind of kept standing out. So, like, regardless
I'm not
of where
mad
they
at
played,
it. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, not mad, but it's like that's what they showed at Alabama A&M left tackle, or he was playing left tackle there at the Senior Bowl. But Carson Vincent, 6'6", 314 pounds, good size, athletic, can move his feet. He had I think what was really telling is that he had one of these reps against one of the better standout defensive ends in Texas A&M edge rusher, Shamar Stewart. And when I see Carson Vincent able to, one, move with a guy that is pretty athletic and win that rep, but also do it in a way that you could project him at the NFL level, using his feet well, using his hands well, that kind of stands out, especially, again, being a lower level school going up against a guy from Texas A&M. That really stood out. But those are just two of the guys that I thought really raised their stock. I'll also throw in another one, Jackson Slater, Sacramento State. Again, another one of these smaller school guys, but
this is where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. This is the good opportunity for them when you get into the Senior Bowl. You're facing obviously the best senior, and now allowing undergraduates into Senior Bowl to just showcase what you're all about. And the one-on-one drills, the team settings are a good way to stand out above the rest. So Jackson Slater, Carson Vincent, Gray Zabel did some good things for draft stock.
Now, I've heard we talked about Gray Zabel a little bit on the show here, and he's the one that seems to have the world taken by storm right now, right? Again, this is just practices. These are just one-on-ones, but what was it about him? Was it the pure versatility and dominance at every spot that stood out? Was it the fact that he could do a little bit of each, right? Was there one that that stood out? Like, what was it about him at that moment that just kept catching everyone's eye?
Well, I think the big thing, it was that versatility. It's like you see him have a good rep at left guard. All right, okay, make note of that. Then the very next time, obviously going through the cycle of guys going through their one-on-ones, now he's lining up at center. It's like, okay, how's he going to do here? Snap the ball, block the opposing defensive lineman, and then you wait. And again, right guard, it's like, okay, this guy, regardless of what side he's on, where you have to change your position of your feet or your hand placement, he's consistent with it. And that's a big thing with these reps. It's like, can you be consistent with your wins, how you're going to go against these defensive linemen? And I think that's what really stood out with Zabel. It's like each one of these days, he's just stacking practices. And that was not the same for, a lot of other guys where maybe they had a slow start, where you're getting acclimated to all the different coaching, all the different players you're working with or you're going up against. But no, Zabel, from start to finish, these 3 practices in Mobile, Alabama, he was consistent. I think that's what really stood out for him, just the consistency of how he played regardless of where he lined up.
Yeah, it sounds like he's the one that just everybody was like, okay, that's somebody we have to keep an eye on. And when I saw his name pop up, I knew him at, you watch it. I liked Colorado this year, so I got to see North Dakota State. Like, yeah, he was a monster, but is it versus that top competition? It's good to see that he was able to do it versus some of that bigger name competition there. Offensive line is going to be huge for us, but we got problems on both sides of the trenches. Was there anybody on that defensive line that really stood out to you that you thought, okay, maybe Bears need to take a flyer on this guy?
Yeah, so just when I was looking at these defensive linemen, I also looked at them through the eyes of like Dennis Allen and what he's looking for in some of these edge rushers, these bigger type of guys.
Yeah.
Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M fits that bill, being 6'6", 290. He didn't have a lot of production in 2024 in terms of sack production, only 1.5 sacks, but played with a lot of energy, showed some bend around the corner, had a really nice rip move on some of the reps he was having in the one-on-ones. But this is a guy that, looking at him, yes, he may not have the production in college, but can you project him to do more at the NFL level, especially with that size? Like, that's someone that you potentially just take a flyer on because he has the physical traits that, some other guys just don't have. So Shamar Stewart was someone that definitely stood out to me. Toledo's Darius Alexander. This is he plays mostly on the interior, but there were a couple reps where you lined him outside and he's fluid enough, quick enough off the line of scrimmage where you're like, oh, okay, if you're a defensive coordinator, how can you get creative with a guy like this? Because he's coming off the line of scrimmage with enough get off the snap, but quickness as well, where I think, it's just the eyes of the beholder with a guy like Dennis Allen. Like, how could he use a guy like that? But he was really consistent in the one-on-ones, showing some power, using the rip move as well. But I think I just put in my notes every day that I was watching disruptive. And I think the Bears could definitely use a couple of those guys. And then one last one I do want to highlight. Maybe he's not the prototypical mold that the Bears will look at it in terms of a defensive end position, but it's UCLA's Olafemi Oladejo.
Okay.
Say, but
that was impressive,
guys. Yeah, I have it all like hyphened out, so I knew exactly how to do this one. 6'3", 250, but impressive with the one-on-ones. a little bit raw in terms of like what he was doing at UCLA, and I think still learning the position. But when you see a guy like that utilize a perfectly executed spin move, and then you on the very next rep, he's in coverage on a running back and is running stride for stride with those guys, you're like, oh, okay, like you're an athletic freak, and I think we just need to, polish some things up. But if we do that as a defensive coordinator, I think you can find a lot of production out of a guy like Oladejo.
Yeah, listen, the thing I love about the Senior Bowl is you find guys late in the draft. It is where we found, Braxton Jones. And again, everybody relax, everybody breathe, right? Braxton Jones was good. It was a good pick when we first made it. The problem was you kept trying to say he's the guy at left tackle, and now you're like, all right, now this clearly isn't working. But you find guys like that down there. Were there any of those guys that you looked at and you saw the hype and you were like, he could be a nice piece if Ryan Poles realizes he's a depth piece?
Ooh, yeah, good question. You know what? When I'm thinking of like players that could be a nice depth piece, like we were just kind of talking about the running back position.
Yeah.
Right. And, I don't know how Ben Johnson feels about DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, knowing what he had in Detroit.
It kind of feels like we know what he feels about DeAndre Swift. Seeing as how his rookie year, he's like, get him out of here.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So when I'm looking at guys that maybe it's more than a depth piece, but more of a contributor, I'm looking at guys that can have an impact in the passing game. Like when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs and how he's able to impact opposing defenses, like he can do it on the ground, obviously, but he's a play threat when you line him outside or get the ball in his hands in space. And Delaware's Marcus Yarns kept on making play after play. And like when you're in one-on-one with linebackers, it's a really tough drill for the linebacker. There's so much space to work with. There's no pass rush, things like that. But I'm just watching how he moves. Fluid. Very, very fluid. Knows how to run routes. And I got a chance to talk to him after one of the practices. And, I prefaced like, hey, I cover the Bears, Ben Johnson being the head coach. Are there any guys that you mold your game after or see at the NFL level? And one of the guys that he likes to think that have some similarities is a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm like, okay, that would fit if, you were to come over here to Chicago and what Ben Johnson could potentially do with you. But very fluid mover and soft hands. I just think like if you're thinking of playmakers that you can find later in the draft. I know a lot of Bears fans are fixated on maybe Genty at 10. Like, I don't know about, like, I was just talking with Herb Howard not too long ago. Like, I don't think that's the move here. That's a luxury pick if anything, but you can find some of these running backs in a deep class.
Nick, listen, we here at the Windy City Breeze are tired of hearing of Ashton Genty. Listen, and it sounds like hate, dog. This is what I don't want to go. It sounds like hate. But people look at Jahmyr Gibbs, they look at Saquon Barkley, they look at Derrick Henry, and they go, that's what we missed out on. They don't look at the fact that Derrick Henry ended up injured, even though he was having a great season the year before in Tennessee because he didn't have an offensive line. They don't look at the fact that I think Saquon Barkley's yards per carry after a 2,000 yard from scrimmage season, his rookie year, ended up being like 3.9 yards per carry because they didn't have an offensive line. His first year in Philly, he's almost the leading rusher in NFL history if they let him play the last game. Like, it's not hate on Ashton Genty. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll be good at the NFL level. But the Senior Bowl is where I'm looking for my running backs. The Senior Bowl is where I'm looking for guys that are going to, because I want Ryan Poles to look at the big colleges and say, oh, you played this well against the best of the best on the offensive line? Perfect. I need you versus, hey, were you a great running back? What can you do behind the FCS left tackle who is probably getting pushed over at this point? Not to say that these guys can't take that next step and be good players here, but when I hear Ashton Genty, I'm so nervous because every time Ben Johnson talks, he goes, you got to start it off with the running game. I'm like, he's going to draft a running back very early.
And look, Bears fans, I think it would be a very polarizing pick to take a guy. And I get it, super talented, but DeAndre Swift also had a career year behind the Eagles offensive line.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley has had a historic year behind that Eagles offensive line. Like, it makes a difference. And if you draft a guy like that, you still got to build up the line to allow him to be the best version of himself. So I would be pretty shocked if that first round pick is not somewhere in the trenches, but we'll have to see how Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles kind of collaborate there to get the guy that they ultimately see fit.
Well, let's finish it out with this, because I appreciate your time and you taking the time out to come on the show. Was there anybody that you saw that may change what the Bears want to do at the top of the draft? Of course, Gray Zabel, like I said, has been the hot name, but we've just said you're either going Kelvin Banks Jr. or you're going Will Campbell. Those are the only two moves that the Bears are going to make. Maybe one of my co-hosts here on the Windy City Breeze, Jordan JC, said maybe you trade back, you go get Josh Simmons, who's been a pure left tackle but dealt with some injury. We keep saying they're going line, and offensive line specifically. Did you see anybody down there that maybe the Bears would go, okay, if we get him late, we may be able to do something different with this first round pick?
I would think it might be one of the edge rushers that if you're looking at, maybe you can get one of these guys in the middle tier rounds. And, I guess it's all going to be how these teams evaluate some of these guys. I saw somebody in the chat put in Princely, not even going to attempt the last name out of UCLA, but he was a guy that really popped off as well. But like I just said, like Toledo's Darius Alexander did. So did Shamar Stewart. Like, Mike Green is another one who had, that was probably the greatest one-on-one rep, most violent, like where he just bulldozed Connerly from Oregon, who's supposed to be a projected day 2 pick. It was the most violent thing I'd ever seen. Like, those are the type of guys where you're looking, if you're Ryan Poles, like, oh man, it's enticing. Like, can I get one of these guys later on and, still end up with a offensive lineman that you feel is going to be a capable day 1 starter? That's where I would see it. But, obviously the Senior Bowl definitely has talent, but there's still some of these really good players out there that obviously are not participating in this that may be better suited for that 10th overall pick. But I think a lot of guys did raise their stock, like Gray Zabel. I don't know where Gray Zabel was before, this past 3 days, but it sure does feel like he's going to be a day 2 pick and probably be one of the earlier guys picked on that day.
Yeah. Now, that is the hilarious part. It's like a guy that almost was not on your radar. All of a sudden it's like, well, this guy's a top 41 pick in the draft. I was like, how'd that happen? That was a day later. But we'll see what ends up happening. Nick, I appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show, man. Of course, follow Nick over on Twitter at Nicholas Moreano. Let them know where else you're at. You got the YouTube channel cracking now, man. You've got so much stuff that you're doing with the bigs, man. Let the people know where they can find you at, dog.
Yeah, so definitely I'll put everything on Twitter at Nicholas Moreano, but the YouTube page also is where you're going to find where, I'll make my own videos, but Herb Howard and I, we're collaborating, doing some things. So
I loved it.
You can follow at Nicholas Moreano, and then, at the bigs, like we're still putting out content over there as well. So it's been fun. And as you know, like the Bears keep us busy. So we'll have everything up to date with everything that's going on with the team.
They always keep us busy, man. Nick, thanks for stopping by. We'll talk to you later, man.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Have a good one. Nicholas Moreano, ladies and gentlemen, hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Clap it up for Nick, man. Drop some claps in the chat. Drop a little applause in the chat, man. Yeah, there we go. I wanted to have somebody who had their eyes on these players come on to the show and talk about it, because I can sit here from my house and say, oh, great Zabel, this guy's a great player. But when you hear the enthusiasm around some of these guys, when you hear the excitement around a guy like Gray Zabel, I do think that it is you see him start to move up in the draft, right? You see him start to you see the level of talent at schools that maybe you wouldn't have seen, right? So like, I think that those are the things to me that when I'm evaluating some of these names, when I'm looking at some of these names, when I'm excited about some of the players that are coming up, I want to talk to guys who have their eyes on them, because there's some of the running backs down there. He brings up, running backs out of UCLA. He looks at the edge rushers and things like that. Like, those are the guys that you have to look at, because here's where Ryan Poles to me is missed. I don't know what's going on in that third round, but that has been complete misses. Your glue guys are the guys you need to hit on. Your glue guys are the guys that you need to really be locked in on, because your stars are going to be your stars, right? Your top guys are going to be your top guys no matter what. Your Caleb Williams are going to be there. Your Roma Dunzes are going to be there. Those guys are going to be there. The guys you have to get right, though, are the glue guys that bring all of that together. The guys you have to get right are the top names that bring all of that together. We can sit here and talk about a Peanut Tillman, but we also got to talk about an Alex Brown. We can sit here and talk about a Brian Urlacher, but we also got to talk about a Henry Melton. That's how this thing works in my mind. And that's how it works with most teams. You look at these teams in the Super Bowl right now. Everybody on that team is an elite. Everybody on the Kansas City Chiefs is an elite. Everybody who's on the Philadelphia Eagles isn't elite. But it's about what they bring together to turn into something elite. That's why I want to know about guys who are in that Senior Bowl, man. By the way, over 200 in that shit. Over 300 in that shit. 300. Appreciate Nick for coming on, man. Appreciate him for rocking with us. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love as well. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review, man. Y'all know what to do. I'm gonna get up out of here. I guess has my camera been tweaking the whole time? I don't know what the heck's going on with the camera. Let's see. Can I like get the brain to reset? I'm still here. Everybody breathe. Give it a second. It doesn't matter now because remind me later about it doesn't matter now because I'm about to get up out of here, but let's see. Maybe it works now. There we go. There you go. There we go. Jason, I say, yeah, yo, boy, maybe, but being from a smaller school, people might pass on these bigger names from the bigger schools, even though my Green was the sack leader, I think, in college. I think I get what you were trying to say. Basically, that people are looking at the big names and missing some of these smaller schools. 100%. I believe that's what you were trying to say there. Jordan said everything was good, but the audio was good, but the camera was tweaking. That happens sometimes, man. That happens sometimes. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. We'll figure it out. It'll sound great in podcast form. Tap back in with it on the podcast side. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love, man. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. I'm going to get up out of here. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Gotta go check on wifey, baby boy, and Aria. Little mama as always, man. If any news breaks, y'all know we'll be back. Make sure to tap in with us over on the Chicago Bulls Breeze as well, covering all the latest Bulls content. I had to rip the Bulls a new one for ignoring a Josh Giddey trade. Y'all stay safe out there, man. Peace.